I recently started building a new deck outside my shack, and in the spirit of being a poor person, I decided to try and use fallen trees from around the property for timber as much as possible. I was cutting up one fallen tree when I heard a snap behind me and the sound of a much larger tree crashing down less than 100 metres away. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera, but with my wealth of experience in 3D animation and visual effects, I was able to perfectly recreate the scene. So with this gift that has been bestowed upon me, I believe you're looking at my new deck, only encased in this cellulose tomb from which I must remove it. Previously, I would have done that with the landlord's chainsaw, but for some reason he won't let me borrow it anymore. I don't know why, I hardly used it. But I've been looking online and found myself a bargain second-hand Stihl MS661 chainsaw, which after some TLC will get set up on the Alaskan mill and will start ripping. Now before getting to work on this tree, I had to remove another dead tree from above the work site for safety. You should definitely watch that video after this one, I'll link it in the description. With the dangerous Widowmaker gone, I can now get started cutting up the tree that we want our timber from. Alright, I've got a couple of nice 2.6 metre lengths cut out of that tree. One of them looks fantastic and one's got a little bit of rot in the middle, but it's not too bad. I think it's quite usable still. And I haven't mentioned this much larger tree lying on the ground down the middle here. That's been there a long time and I think it's got quite a lot of rot on the underside, but I may come back later and cut it open and see what the wood's like in the middle. But for now, I'm going to drag these two lengths up to the shack and we'll get set up for some chainsaw milling. Here is the new beast. The Stihl MS661 has seen some use and abuse. All of its rubber anti-vibration mounts had completely disintegrated, so I replaced those. I replaced the broken clutch springs. I removed a few trees from the air filter, and most importantly replaced the missing badge to give it that new saw feel. I sharpened the chain and filed down the bar to get it cutting nice and straight, and now she's ready to bolt into the chainsaw mill sled, so let's do that. You can see here I've clamped the bar where the sprocket is, and now the sprocket won't turn at all. So I'll take the dog spikes off the saw, then we can move the sled a bit closer to the engine. With the dogs out of the way, I can get a maximum cut width of 475mm or 18.5 inches with this 24-inch bar. A bit of length is lost to the clamps, guides and sprocket. Make sure there's a small gap between this clamp and the engine. If they're touching, it could apply a bending force to the bar, and keeping everything straight is essential when your cut is nearly 3 meters long. Once the clamps are done up tight, Check that the chain still moves freely. Then it's time to set the cut depth, the distance the bar will sit below the guide rails. Here I'm setting the cut depth to 115mm for the initial cut, which will safely clear the screws and fasteners I used to secure the guide rails to the log. There are engraved measurements on the sled, but with the build quality of this thing, I'm more inclined to trust my square edge. Plus, the chain actually cuts a few millimeters wider than the bar, which is not factored into the engraved values. Let's get the guide rails installed for our first cut. Here I got lucky and 3 cross braces all rested nicely on the log. I'm keeping them in place with 75mm bugle screws. I pre-drilled holes in the log to make sure the screws can be removed again later. I learnt that one the hard way. Now let's see if we can make our first cut with the 661. With the top cut done, we can remove the guide rails and set up the chainsaw sled for the slab thickness that we want. I'm setting it up for 51mm or 2 inches. Turns out the engravings are pretty accurate, so maybe I'll use those going forward. Let's cut our first slab. One's got a little bit of rot in the middle. Yeah, there's quite a lot of rot in the middle. Maybe when a tree snaps in half of its own accord, I should take that as a sign. Nonetheless, I'm going to keep ripping and there should still be plenty of wood we can use. Setting up the guide rails on our second log is going to take a bit more prep work, and I have to find one more song to bring it home. Let's see if you like this one. Here I had to square up the edges of the log because it was too wide for the chainsaw sled. I just purchased a 28-inch bar online so I can do wider cuts in the future. Here's me hoping the rot in this log is not as bad as the last. That didn't sound good. I intended to cut these down the middle anyway, so I think they're still usable. I just won't get the 200mm beams I was hoping for, maybe 140 instead. Well, I think I'm running out of daylight, and with a storm expected tonight, that marks the start of what's meant to be at least a week of rain. So I'm going to drag the timber slabs inside, and I think I'll upload the footage that I've already shot, and when the weather improves, we'll resume this project with a part 2. So please subscribe, stick around, and we'll pick this up again in the next video. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.